Our discussion topic today is finding aids, but what we are ultimately discussing is the importance of describing all your stuff in a way that records information about your organization's holdings in some medium other than in your own head, and can be used as a guide to any potential user, be that you, yourself, other volunteers or staff at your organization, or an outside user. The Society of American Archivists Dictionary of Archives Terminology defines finding aid as a description that typically consists of contextual and structural information about an archival resource. Notice that I emphasized contextual and structural when I read this. These are some of the core principles of archival arrangement and description. Archival description, unlike library cataloging, goes beyond the content and physical description of the records themselves. Information to manage and interpret the records is also essential to description. Understanding the context in which records were created, who created them, the time period during which they were created, the purpose for which they were used, and how they came to be in your organization's custody may affect how a user interprets the content of those records. At this point, I'd like to take a moment to look at the cross-referenced terms associated with finding aid. Listed under broader terms is access tool. An access tool is defined as a systematic resource that helps researchers find information in an archival repository or individual archival records. If we look at the narrower terms cross-referenced with access tool, we see calendar, catalog, finding aid, guide, index, inventory, and register. These are all, in a general sense, finding aids, because they are specific tools designed for describing various materials in your collection by different methodologies to aid in finding items within your collection. Most historical societies, archives, libraries, and museums hold a mixture of archival records and manuscripts, library materials, which we would broadly think of as published works, and artifacts. Unfortunately, there's no one access tool that is sufficient for describing and providing seamless access to all these types of materials. You may find that a cataloging tool, of which there are many, because libraries have a long tradition of developing standards and tools for description and access, will work great for published works and can be adapted to work well for artifacts, but falls miserably short when it comes to describing collections of archival records and manuscripts. Let's go back to our definition for finding aid. An important thing to point out is that inventory is listed here as a synonym. As we can see from this dictionary entry, the first definition of inventory is a finding aid. If any of you have worked with the Vermont Historical Records Program before, you may be aware that one of the very first things we ask is if you have a comprehensive inventory of your holdings. And if the answer is no, we suggest that you create one. In the archives world, we tend to fixate on finding aids for individual archival collections, and this is a good reminder that the broadest level of finding aid is the inventory of your holdings. One last entry that I would like to share is the term collection. We use this term a lot, and as you can see, it has a lot of different definitions. I wanted to highlight this term for a couple of reasons. Number one, I have found myself referring to collections willy-nilly while preparing this presentation and made a conscious effort to reduce that impulse and avoid excess confusion. And more importantly, number two, the nature of archival and manuscript materials being created as or gathered purposefully into sets is the reason that finding aids are used for archival description. The purpose of the finding aid is to provide the user with an understanding of a collection in its entirety and locate portions of the collection pertinent to research. While there's no standard structure to finding aids, they often include similar sets of information areas. Identifying information generally includes the title of the collection, the dates covered by the records, the quantity or size of the collection, often a call number, collection number, or location code. The context area provides information about the entity responsible for creating, accumulating, or maintaining the records, which is often an individual, family, or an organization. Often included here is a biographical or historical note about the creator. There can also be information here about the source of the acquisition or transfer. The content and structure area often includes a narrative portion describing how the staff has arranged or ordered the materials in the collection. These will often be called the scope and content notes. Included here could be a detailed inventory of the collection. This could be an outline of the series in a collection or a box and folder list, or for very important collections, it might include an item level inventory or a partial item level inventory that highlights certain specific items. This area might also include appraisal, destruction, or scheduling information. Conditions of access and use might provide information about the language or scripts of the material, the physical characteristics of the materials, or technical requirements to access the materials. There could be information here on restrictions for access to the collection or certain parts of the collection. You may find information about copyright and reproduction in this area. There may also be various notes in finding aids, most of which would probably be for internal use. These notes areas could be used for tracking revisions to the description, such as efforts to update archival description to better represent new historical insights or cultural understanding. Internal notes might also record preservation treatments or digitization methods. Finding aids come in all kinds of formats. Some archives just have paper copies to use on site, while others have word processing documents, PDFs, or HTML or XML finding aids that can be viewed on their websites or shared digitally upon request. For some, that inventory in the form of a spreadsheet or a database is the finding aid and requires staff mediation to aid a researcher in their request. This has been a very brief overview of finding aids. If you're inspired to dig deeper into archival arrangement and description, we can point you to many additional resources. In June 2022, the Vermont Historical Society presented a Cataloging 101 workshop series for local historical societies and museums. The 2 sessions can be viewed on YouTube. The Society of American Archivists is a great resource for publications and educational opportunities. It's also the place to find the most recent edition of Describing Archives, a content standard if you really want to get into the weeds of archival description.